Hello, good morning, good morning. Hello, good morning, good morning. I'm always talking about caffeine. Could it be that I wrote the book, Never Drink Coffee During a Business Meeting? I don't know, maybe. Or could it be that I lived in Seattle, Washington for 18 years and never saw the sun and I needed a caffeine boost? Not sure. But anyway, thanks for joining us for Now Conversations. It's our Saturday morning conversations with authors. And you will be happy that you're either joining us live on LinkedIn Live or Facebook Live or YouTube, or you're watching the rebroadcast of this when you meet our let me just say one of many amazing things on his resume, 12-time author. So I'm going to introduce him here in a moment, and let me come on stream if I have had enough caffeine to remember how to do that. How's this? So good morning, everybody. All right, so I'm Lisa Marie Garcia, and we do this vodcast every Saturday at 9:30. So once you watch one show, you'll want to join us for the next. We're going to talk about, we feature authors, book authors, and usually, because I've been doing this for now 8 years and how many titles we've produced, I kind of know those questions that you might not know to ask if you're not a book publisher. So we'll see if I get there with this author, but let me bring him on stage. His name is Dave Bossert, and I'm going to read a little bit about him. It's just crazy great. So first of all, I did say he's a 12-time author, and he is an award-winning artist, filmmaker. He received his BA from the Cal Arts School of Film and Video with his major in character animation. Seems like such a fun major. He was is a 32-year veteran with the Walt Disney Company. And listen to this. He's contributed to his talents to books and movies such as Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. We might talk about that a little bit, The Lion King, and so on and so on. And now he's an independent producer, creative director, and writer. He just came back from Romania and was telling me about that film festival and his role. He had a keynote spot there. I could go on and on, so I won't go on and on because his resume is just rock star. There are a few things I would love to dig into, but just a couple more items about him. He is a visiting scholar at Carnegie Mellon University of Entertainment. I'm very curious about that because I have a high school senior searching out all the colleges, and Carnegie Mellon's one of them. So that caught my eye. He's also a historian, widely regarded as an expert in the realm of Disney animation and art history. As I said, he's published 12 books. There's many awards he's received over the years, some from Apple and British Academy of Film and Television. As I said, you're going to need to dig in to him, and I'm going to welcome you this morning and send you his link so you can do that, as well as we have a chat with him. But let's bring him up on stage. Come on stage, David Bossert. Thank you so much for joining us. And here.
Hi, Lisa. How are you?
And it's early for you. Good morning.
Yes, it is early, but I'm an early bird, so I'm nice and chipper.
You must be, because for all your accomplishments they say there's a saying about what people perceive as overnight fame that happened like 30 some years took you there. So you have many, many years doing this and quite a resume, quite accomplishment. So thank you for joining us for our very fast moving 30-minute conversation this morning.
My pleasure. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Well, I want to start just with what is my curiosity about you. If you could we could dig in a little bit. I'd like you to talk a little bit about your time at Disney. Not very many, we've never had any author that has that history and that connection. And then also maybe it gets us to talk about your House of the Future, one of your latest releases, and that. So if you would mind, let's start the conversation there.
Sure. As you mentioned, I went to California Institute of the Arts and I majored in character animation. A lot of people don't realize it, but Walt Disney helped found the California Institute of the Arts, and the character animation program that was at the school was really a training ground for Walt Disney Animation Studios. At the time that I went there, a lot of the older animators that had worked with Walt Disney were starting to retire. And so the studio needed to backfill with new talent. And so I was fortunate that I was able to go to Cal Arts. I went on a Walt Disney scholarship, and then not long
Yes.
after I graduated from school, I got hired at Disney, and I got hired as an entry level position, which is called an in betweener. I filled in drawings in between the drawings
Mhm.
that the animators had done, and I started my career there, and went from one picture to the next, and was there for 32 and a half years. It was in a blink of an eye. But I started writing,
Yes.
towards the end of that career at Disney, and I had spent a lot of time with Roy Disney, became friends with him, traveled with him, worked on projects
Mhm.
with him, and so after he passed away, I had all these great stories, and a friend of mine suggested I put those stories in a book, and that was my first book, Remembering Roy E. Disney, and I went ahead and I wrote up a synopsis of what the book would be, and I did a sample chapter, and I cold called an editor at Disney Publishing, essentially Disney Editions, and sent the material to her and said, "Would you guys be interested in a book on Roy E?" And the response was, "Yes, absolutely, we're going to give you a book contract." And I thought, wow, this is easy. And as most people know, writing is not easy. Writing is all about rejections. Most people get a pile of rejection letters. Even Stephen King, by the way, if you read Stephen King's On
Yes.
Writing, which is a really terrific book, he got rejected a ton of times before he was able to break through,
Yes.
and so I felt very fortunate that I got that book contract. And when I finished the book and I turned in the manuscript, I pitched them on another book, and they said, "Yeah, we want to do that book." And that was my Dolly and Disney Destino book, and I had helped finish that project Destino that Walt Disney and Salvador Dali had started. So I was part of the team that finished the film 58 years after they started it, and so I just latched on to write what you know, and that's what I've been doing. I'm writing about stuff that I either know about or have a real strong interest in and a passion for.
I love
So
it. Oh my
that,
gosh,
yeah,
there's so much there to
yeah.
unpack. I appreciate so much what you said. First of all, though, it's very cool that essentially your first job out of college was with Disney, correct?
No, it was my second job, because when I graduated from Cal Arts, I actually worked for a small studio in Los Angeles that was doing some early video games. I worked there for about 8 months, and then they went bankrupt. And I thought, well, I guess I'll head back to New York, because they went bankrupt. But a friend of mine said, "Hey, why don't you send your book over to Disney?" And so I sent my portfolio over to Disney, and they hired me, and I thought I would just be hired for the one picture that they brought me on for. And I thought, well, at the end of that picture, I'll head back to New York, and that didn't happen. They put me on to the next picture, and I figured, well, after that picture, I'll probably go back to New York. And that went on for probably about 5 pictures before I realized that I guess I'm going to stay here for a while.
Right. Okay. Well, and that in betweener, that's very cool. And to me, and here you are, you got your degree. What I love about that is, the work environment has changed, right? And the work ethic has changed. I mean, clearly 30 years ago, 25 years ago, when I was, my first job out of college was with IBM. But there was that work ethic where you're willing to do, and it's just expected to do every and anything, even when you have a degree, and you're coming in there, and it sounds like and then you stuck with it. And what I love about what you said that's so important, obviously the rejection is that you were, though, willing to step out, and like you said, you cold call, you just did that, you pitched things, and you were solo by yourself. It wasn't like there were others around you doing the same thing. You weren't modeling yourself after anyone, so to speak. You're like, hey, I've got this idea, I've got this book, take a look at it. Here's the outline, here's my work, all by yourself. And, people, there's a lot of, the imposter syndrome and just the doubting, and they know what they want to do, but sometimes some of it is the people they surround themselves with poking holes in what they might want to do that's holding them back. To be honest, I've seen that, myself. So what a strong message of here you are today, but that's how it started.
Yeah, and to your point, I sort of filter out the naysayers, because really the majority of people out there are naysayers, and you have to be focused on just doing what you believe in, what you're passionate about, regardless of what somebody's telling you, or somebody's, the voices in your head are whispering. You mentioned imposter syndrome. It's a real thing. As an artist, I know that, and most of my colleagues all feel the same way. That somehow you don't deserve to be there, that somehow you're going to be found out, and all of that. And you have to quiet those voices. You have to really push that aside. And for me, I just I follow through. I always hear people say someday. Well, guess what? There's no someday in the week.
Yeah.
There's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but there's no someday. Okay.
That's a good one.
And for me, I don't talk in terms of someday, or maybe I'll do it, or I'd like to. I talk in terms of I'm going to do it. I have a list of books that I keep adding to, and I sit there and say, I'm going to write this book, and it'll be my next book after this book. And I go from one book project to the next. And the best piece of advice I ever read about writing is from Stephen King. And he said, you just show up. That means you get to your desk, you sit down, and you write every day. You don't sit there and worry about, what you're going to write about. You don't worry about if it's any good. You just sit down and you start writing. And you do that every day, and you're going to get better at it. And by the way, I will tell you, Lisa, that after my second book, the second book deal I got, I decided I need to be better at writing. And so I enrolled at the UCLA Writers Program, and I went there for 3 years while I was writing books. And I was very quiet about the fact that I had already been published, but I look to improve all the time. I don't think that any of us knows everything. And for me, I wound up getting a certificate in creative writing, and I got another certificate in fiction writing. So I really put my nose to the grindstone and said, I'm going all in on this.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I just posted that we can always get better and learn more. And part of that is that you also have to have that coachable spirit, right? And I actually had a conference yesterday, and I met someone that I could clearly see really doesn't. And it's a hard way to live, thinking that, you know it all, and we will always be learning. But I want to talk about a couple things, because you hit on something so important, that just show up. 100%. And we're asked about, how do you deal with writer's block? How do you, finish your writing and all of that? We call it BIC. It's called butt in chair, where we say, put it in your calendar, just like your normal meeting, and just sit there, even if you don't feel like it, even when you don't feel like it, even if you just sit there and, this is my book time, and I'm having you look at covers, or you're looking at following other authors that are in your genre. Just like you said, just show up, just do it. The behavior then becomes part of who you are, right? And it becomes part of your ingrained in your schedule, and it becomes that discipline that gets you to the finish line. So such great advice, and especially for first-time authors, and especially for authors that have, as you've probably met people that have been working on the one book for 20 or 30 years and never get there. and they just, sometimes you wonder if they even want to get there. I mean, I've met authors that have been working and re-editing and they're in writers groups and all of that, which can be great resources, but I think also it can be comfortable places where they're not moving past to the next step, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. When I worked at Disney and worked on all of these films with so many fantastic artists, I was part of this great team of artists. We had a saying: we never finish a movie, we just release it. Right? Because we could, as artists, just be tinkering with movies, until doomsday.
Right.
And you just have to draw a line in the sand and say, I'm done. I have to move. I have to go forward. And yes, I have talked to many people who have been working on their first book for 7, 8, 10 years. And I walk away from some of those conversations going, wow, like I think the person may be afraid to put what they've written out into the world. And I'm not afraid. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that I was an artist at Disney for, more than 32 years. And I was being critiqued all the time on my artwork. So I've got a very thick skin to criticism. And I have the ability to filter out what is a legitimate critique, a legitimate note from things that I don't think are relevant. I always tell people, any of the books I write, I send them out to a half a dozen what I call beta readers, and they're usually people who are familiar with the topic I'm writing on. And have knowledge of the topic I'm writing on. And I'm sending it to them because I want them to, come back with notes that say, hey, you didn't mention this, or hey, this date isn't really right because it happened, 3 months earlier or something. You know what I mean? And so those are the kinds of notes I want to get. And I take those notes to heart. And out of those half a dozen beta readers, I look for similar notes from several people.
Yeah.
Right. So if you get similar notes from different people, those are notes you have to go look at and really, really address, and sometimes you're going to get a bizarre note out of left field that you just go, yeah, I'll look at that, but I don't really agree with that. You know what I mean? Because that's not the story I'm telling. So that's, I think it's important. You just have to put your work out in the world, and you have to be comfortable enough to take your lumps if you do something wrong. And trust me, we all make mistakes. We're all human, and we all try to do the best we can. But sometimes, you leave something out, or you didn't put something in that you might have should have put in. I don't know. But, for me, I sit and write. I write and write, and I put it out in the world. I have beta readers, reading it. And all I can say is that the more people you show your work to, the more notes you get, the better off you're going to be with the final, the finished product. I generally live with a book for 2 years, start to finish.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. And it tells.
That's just me.
Yeah, well, and it tells how much effort and how many elements there are to an excellently produced book. I can, now in the role I'm in, I can spot something. In fact, I just saw it yesterday that was definitely just slammed in. Someone just, said, oh, I just want a book. I mean, no offense to anyone. Everyone has their own experience, but you can tell. I mean, like we say, if someone doesn't finish one of our books, we take it as an insult because we didn't keep them engaged in the book. We didn't edit it impactfully, most as impactful as it needed to be. And we all have books in our homes. I do, that I haven't finished. They lost me. They took me down a rabbit trail and all of that. But I do love that you brought up a process. And again, because this half hour has to do with book publishing, you brought up a very good process. And it's a process that we call the beta read proof stage in the book. Mm-hmm. And we actually, to be honest, we've only had this in our process for our company, probably the last, maybe approaching 3 years. So it hasn't been the 8 years. But basically now, as of about 3 years ago, after the book is content edited, developmental line edited, and copy edited, but most of the time it's before format editing, given the time frame, we go out to beta read for the exact reasons. And we will send it out, the manuscript, to the beta read list that our author has, but then we also have our own strongly trusted beta readers and proofers. And what you said is exactly right. When you're first talking about the, not listening necessarily to the criticism, and that I remember hearing on a TED talk that I keep in my in my head, something great. It said something like, hopefully I won't mess it up, something like, never take constructive criticism from someone that's never constructed anything. And that just hit me, right? If they have not right, what are you even doing, settling there? But I love that. So that whole beta read process, and the fact of what you said, it does help you become better at your writing, and it just helps your book become better. And it's just a great process. And I suspect I've read more than a few books that I don't think they had that process, because I saw a lot of egregious things in their manuscript. I'm like, oh, I don't think anyone proofed this, and it's published, So,
well, and that's part of the issue with all the new technology and everything that's available out there, is that anybody can just slam a book together and throw it out there.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's going to be any good. And there's millions of Kindle books, ebooks that
right.
Are 70, 80 pages or something that people just toss out there. And frankly, I want to put out something that's going to stand the test of time, and that there's going to be a copy of in the Library of Congress.
I love that. And again, it represents you. I mean, it represents, what we publish, even if it's a blog or, something on our website. I mean, at the end of the day, it is our legacy. It does represent you. Is that content what you want to represent you? I mean, some people are I think they don't really, get that. And talking about where you said someday, there's no someday in the week. We do legacy books and memoirs for people that are 80 years old, and why hold it back? Okay, well, I want to have enough time. So we've got some time. Let's talk about your book, David. What one of your latest releases, and man alive, it's so unique. Yes, The House of the Future. I'm going to put your website in there, but please talk about this. I've read a lot about it, but I'd love people to hear from you how it is. Yep.
Yeah.
The whole concept. It's awesome.
It's this is a book that I was very passionate about, because it was a free attraction at Disneyland that was there from 1957 to 1967. I never got to see it. And a lot of people I know never got to see it. And I decided I really wanted to do an in-depth dive on this attraction, because it was cutting-edge architecture. It was a reimagining of what a house could be like. And all of the modern conveniences that they thought would be in the future in 1957. So in 1957, when they opened this house, they were saying, this is what a house of the future 30 years from now, 1987, this is what houses are going to look like, and what people are going to be living in. And I thought it was fantastic, because it was visionary. It was projecting out things that were possible, that didn't exist. And believe it or not, there's a lot of things now that do exist that they envisioned back then. Like the Ring doorbell and video phones. We all carry a phone with us, and we have the ability to FaceTime with people. So back in 1957, they were still using rotary phones. And there it is. There's the book. It's the House of the Future, Walt Disney, MIT, and Monsanto's Vision of Tomorrow. And it's really speaks to the age of optimism in the 1950s, and all the possibilities that were available. One of the things that the house did was it introduced new technologies like microwave ovens, which are ubiquitous in people's homes today, and even in dorm rooms at colleges. But in 1957, microwave oven was out of reach for most people. They were super expensive, and it was developed out of technology that was developed by the military during World War II. So, there's a lot of interesting things. And I also put a spotlight on a lot of the mid-century furniture designers of the time. And so what people are going to get out of this book is they're actually going to be able to take a tour of the house of the future exactly the way you would have taken it had you walked through the house. It's laid out in the same exact order as the tour map. And I really go into descriptions in my text of what people are seeing. And it's also profusely illustrated with artwork, visual development artwork for how some of the rooms were going to work or look, and also tons of photographs of the various iterations, because they did some remodels of the interior of the house throughout.
Yeah, I was looking through some of the notes from some of the reviews. And you've got a great forward in this book, and then just some of the reviews are rock star. And so, from the publisher side of my brain, I'm like, oh my gosh, I bet this book is beautiful, and and then I thought, I'm sure it is. And then I thought, oh my gosh, how much would it cost me with my little printing company to even produce this book? Because as you know, paper and prices of book printing is sky high, like 3 times what it's been in the history, my history here. So, has that been a factor in terms of retail marketing or distribution? Has that affected you?
No, because what I focus on, and I'm fortunate to be working with the Old Mill Press, which is sort of a little boutique publisher, is focusing on quality. I think people are willing to pay for quality if they want something. And, I'm looking at the types of books that I'm doing are coffee table books, and they're luxury items. And that's sort of the niche that I'm going for, is that I don't want to do a cheap paperback book that doesn't do justice to the subject matter. These types of books. I mean, even Lisa, even the cover has a what they call a soft touch or velvet touch laminate on it that doesn't take fingerprints.
Yeah.
And all of those things I think are important.
Yes, doesn't show.
And by the way, I do want to mention, you mentioned the foreword. The foreword was written by Bob Weiss, the former president of Walt Disney Imagineering, which is the part of the Disney company that designs and builds the parks. And so, he was very well versed and had actually walked through the House of the Future in his youth. And so he was the perfect person to have write the foreword for it.
Well, it's an unbelievably great Christmas present, holiday present, Hanukkah present that's coming up as we're in the gift buying season, right, in retail. But just a very unique offering. I'm a mom of a high schooler. I still have one daughter in high school, but that high school, young A, middle school, any of you parents out there that have kids that are readers, that are bookworms, they will love this book. So, David, we're almost done here, but can you have an offer, right? Would you talk about that?
So,
and everyone, I'm going to put in the show links, the codes to connect and the codes to buy. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So if people want to order the book and get an author signed copy, they can go to theoldmillpress.com. And if you buy it there, you can get a $5 discount. Just use the code FRIEND5, FRIEND, all caps, and the number 5, FRIEND5, and you'll get a $5 discount on the book, which, by the way, will be cheaper than what you can get at some of the online retailers, and shipping is free. So there you have it. Believe it or not, this little boutique publisher, they could
Love
beat
it.
out Amazon
Great.
on the
Oh my
price.
gosh, I knew this.
And you're getting it signed by me.
And
So
that's great, right?
yeah.
But at any minute,
So that,
Amazon could lower the price, and
yeah,
it's
at any
signed by the
minute, but
great.
hopefully that won't happen.
All
But
right.
all I can say is that, giving
That's right.
a book either to yourself or as a gift that's signed by the author means something. It's very special.
Yeah. It is
And
very
I
special, especially with someone as special as you are, David.
and I was also going to mention the fact that if anybody wants to see any of my other books, you can go to my author website, which is davidbossert.com.
Yeah.
davidbossert.com. And
Yes.
there is also free stuff there. So if somebody gives you a copy of one of my books and you want a signed book plate, there's a tab for free stuff. You can get a signed book plate. You can get some bookmarks. There's coasters. There's all kinds of fun stuff. Plus, I have about 60 articles on various aspects of animation and animation art that's up on my website as well. So it's all free content. It's all, visit the site, davidbossert.com.
Yes, and we put your link in. Thank you, David. We put the link in the notes. We'll follow up with that. But again, a 12-time author. You've got to dig into this guy. You will love that you listened to the show today and please connect with him. And David Bossert, the House of the Future. Thank you for being our guest on Saturday Conversations. Now Conversations, I just loved our time together. So thank you. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Lisa.